Hello, everyone. Welcome to this recording on energy citizenship and community-based energy initiatives. My name is Vivian, and I'm from the Center for Civil Society and Governance at the University of Hong Kong. So there are a few key learning outcomes from today's workshop. First is that we hope we can gain a basic understanding of the concept of energy citizenship, with the aim of incubating responsible consumption and production lifestyle, which is the theme of the GAMIthon that you're participating in. I'm hoping that when we explore the concept of energy citizenship, it will help to prompt you to different areas that you can pay attention to when working with different target participants. And secondly, you can understand the importance of energy citizenship partly as a prerequisite to developing community-based energy initiatives. It's by you incubating those ideas of energy citizenship in your participants that they have that motivation to participate in community-based energy initiatives. And of course, we'll talk about what are community-based energy initiatives and what are their potential outcomes. So energy citizenship has two main components to it. The first is building of awareness, as well as the rights to energy. So the rights part would relate to ensuring there's fair access, so equality in being able to access and afford energy. The second part would be the awareness part, so the appreciation of our duties and responsibilities in relation to things like appreciating that our consumption of energy has a contribution towards climate change. So we have responsibility or duty to make sure that we reduce consumption or that we try to work towards a transition to cleaner, renewable energy sources. The second part to it is related to action. And I divide it into individual and collective action, because it's not just what you do as an individual, switching off lights when you don't use it or switching things off and not keeping them on standby. That's just individual action. There is certainly another component to it that's very important, collective action. And that's what we talk about when we mention community-based energy initiative. We want to encourage more collective action. So we're not just confined to those individual, those smaller day-to-day steps that we can take. So community energy initiatives can be formed for many reasons. So it can help to achieve different things. First of all would be the delivery of community renewables. So actually a community owning some kind of renewable energy system like wind power or solar panels. It could be working on energy efficiency. So working with your neighbors or people in your local community to increase efficiency of energy use. The third could be demand reduction. So that could be different behavioral changes. The fourth could be some kind of energy supply projects. And then the fifth would be trying to tackle energy poverty. So trying to recognize groups of people who are in the community who can't afford to cool their homes in our context, in other contexts, then to heat up their homes. So how can we help them? But in terms of deciding what to focus on, we're not saying all initiatives have to cover everything. You can just focus on one or two aspects. But deciding on which goal or which to try and address, it really depends on the local community that you're thinking about. Like, what is their specific needs? What are their characteristics? So which do they need more, or which they have the potential of bringing about change to? There's some characteristics you need to know about community energy initiatives. It's actually a really broad term, so it can cover any kind of formal as well as informal initiatives. So it could be something that's just, gathered by a group of local community members who just discuss, ways that they can reduce consumption of energy in their household. Right, that would be very informal and very much citizen-led. Right, that's one possibility. It could be a collaborative solution. So working between different groups, you have NGOs, perhaps residents, you could have energy companies providing support, or local government, businesses even. So there is usually some kind of collaborative element. There's a local basis, so something that enables people to work together, who live close together. Or, you can always argue that it could be done by different groups of people who are connected virtually to work together. That's also a possibility. And the focus is on facilitating the development and application of sustainable energy practices and or technology. So it doesn't have to be technology based, so it could be practices with a combination of technology or just practices, so on. But there are a few key principles underlying community energy. So there must be engagement of different parties. There needs to be some form of local leadership, and there will be some positive outcomes for the local community. So I'll share with you a couple of Asian case studies. They are quite famous. So once you've heard about them here, you can go and do your own research and understand more about it. So the first case study is set in Taiwan, and the background of it is that there's centralized energy generation, so mostly from large-scale power plants. And to meet energy demand or increase in energy demand, there needs to be more reliance on nuclear power. Right? And so people start to discuss ways in which they can try and avoid it, or to try and contribute more to renewable energy in Taiwan. So that's how the community energy initiative started. They wanted to promote autonomy in generation and help people to generate their own energy. So there are a few obstacles, of course, for individuals if they want to generate, say, solar energy. The first would be sufficient financial resources. There needs to be a series of different application processes for them to put up their solar panels, probably feed it back into the grid, things like that. Lots of procedures with that. And thirdly, a rooftop with abundant sunshine, because this started in the city. So where there are lots of buildings close to each other, so many rooftops do not have abundant sunshine. So it sounds like, these are constraints that are quite similar to the ones that we can have in Hong Kong as well. So the way that it started was that there was the availability of foreign expertise. So first there was a policy of feed-in tariff introduced, and then there is the introduction of foreign expertise, a company called Hand EV from Germany that was then established in Taiwan, and they really helped to promote energy saving in buildings, the building of passive houses, energy education. And then a project called One Person, 1 Kilowatt was started. So with a collaboration as well, was Hand EV with a variety of different initiators. And they were, quite successful. Within the first few years, people were already starting the operation of their own power plants. There was solar energy that was generated. So the way that it works is it combines three things together. So the first arrow is that if there are people with money to spare, then they would be contributing to the buying of solar panels, and then this initiative would guarantee an annual return to them. And that would take, only 10 years to break even. The second part is that if you have a rooftop to spare, then you can lease your rooftop to Hand EV, and they can install solar panels there. And that's only for Hand EV to handle. They will handle the maintenance and responsibilities. But after 20 years, then the solar panels will be sold to the person who owned the rooftop at a discounted price. So thirdly, You still need people with the time and energy to spare to help keep this project running. So you have volunteers, you have docents, curators. So that's a combination of these three things which made it possible. Second case study is the case study in Seoul. So the background is a little bit similar in that there was also brewing public concern over reliance on nuclear energy, issue of energy security, nuclear risk, especially after Fukushima. So this was initiated by a group of residents in an area in Seoul called Sandaego. And they first gathered together for something else in the community to establish a children's library. But after the Fukushima incident, and that they were aware of that their government were planning on building more nuclear power plants to meet increased energy demand, they wanted to see what could be done to reduce risk. So the first stage, they collaborated with an NGO to try and teach them about more detailed information behind the risks involved in nuclear power generation. And then that's how they started. The first thing that they did was to establish this so-called power saving station in their children's library. So they'll work with all these different households in the area to try and find ways to reduce energy usage. So this was because they also felt that, living in the city, they didn't feel like it would be feasible for them to, put up lots of solar panels and then start being able to be less reliant on fossil fuels or nuclear in that matter. So they thought that the first thing that they could really do is to reduce demand. So every month they would put up those little graphs that you see on the right to show their energy usage over that month. And then they would see, oh, this neighbor is doing really well. It's got a really low energy usage. So they can share tips with each other on how they can reduce energy use. So just from that alone, from months and months of doing that, that already helps them to reduce the energy use in that community. Second thing they do is to continue education in that area. So they have this truck that they put up solar panels on called the Energy Cafe, making cotton candy, driving around the neighborhood, trying to raise awareness and getting more people on board. Second thing they did was to address the issue of energy poverty. They realized there are lots of people living in the area who need improvement in their households, so, such as insulation. We need to improve it so that they reduce the need for energy. And so a group of different experts come together to try and work on this. So they also start to establish this community enterprise called the Energy Supermarket. So they start selling these small PV panels and more energy efficient devices. More work on trying to facilitate different people to reduce energy demand. They also establish different partnerships with organizations like the local bank, so where they can offer a solar loan for families who can't pay the upfront cost of buying a small solar panel, then they can get that low interest or even no interest loan to buy solar panels. They also work with university, public institutes, solar panel company, hold workshops, some more knowledge exchange, public education. So the outcome of that was much greater than was expected. They were focusing on their own neighborhood, trying to do all these different things, but they did not realize that their case study actually inspired the Seoul Metropolitan Government to launch a one less nuclear power plant policy. And also, they saw how it was such a successful program in that could be implemented on such a small scale, that the Seoul's mayor also led this new program called the Energy Self-Reliant Village Program. So they were transferring all the good practice that was seen in Sandaego to other small communities in Seoul. So by 2017, they already created 80 more of these energy self-reliant villages. So if we have a think about the potential impact of community-based energy as compared to what we see as traditional, just having feed-in tariff where we have individuals who have, if they have a spare rooftop, as they do in Hong Kong, if you live in, say, a village house, you can put up solar panels, you can feed that back into the grid, and then you would get some monetary return. Right. So if we focus on this, the first column, local distributed renewable energy generation, the people who benefit would be, say, the people who are directly engaged. So the individual who own that rooftop, I would get the monetary return. I would also contribute to carbon emission reduction. Right. So people who benefit are those who are directly involved. Either they're individuals or companies, say, or other, say, Ocean Park or Disneyland, they're doing that as well. They're putting up lots of solar panels. They're getting the monetary return, also reducing their carbon emission. But if we look at all these cases that we saw in Seoul or in Taiwan, getting all the people to work together, to collaborate, you will slowly be able to see a better connected local community, increase of trust between these different groups, reciprocity. So having a much better connected local community would have benefits to not just those that are immediate participants of the energy project, but also generally for the wider community or even the society, right? So the people who benefit could be additional to those who are immediately engaged. The wider community could be benefited from increased social capital. And the impact could also be extended because people involved in these energy projects, they would have a greater awareness of responsibility and things like climate change, their contribution to it. So they would not just stop at energy related or trying to reduce energy use in their home. They would try and extend their influence in other areas of their lives, like the water use or diet and everything. So they'll be motivated to have a much wider spectrum of change to ensure that they can contribute to sustainability in many other ways. Okay, so you see how the potential impact of community-based energy initiatives could be much greater than just individuals doing their own thing in, say, putting up solar panels at their own homes. So why the collective action could have much greater impact compared to just the individual action. So just a quick recap then of what we covered. In understanding energy citizenship, it helps you to think that when you're working with your target participants, there are various things that you can do. So will you want to get your message across to them about appreciating their duties and their responsibilities? Do you also want to make sure that they appreciate it's not just individual action that matters? They can also engage in collective action. Right? So that's things you can think about in your gaming solution. Right? These aspects that you can try and influence your participants. Secondly, so that would be a prerequisite, right? Perhaps in your gaming solution, you think about how to build that idea of citizenship in the people. And that would be a prerequisite for them in perhaps starting these community-based energy initiatives. And of course, once they start engaging in such collective initiative, it can in turn also enhance their energy citizenship. And then thirdly, understanding what community-based energy initiatives entail would help you realize that they have potential in generating both immediate and long-term benefits to your participants and also to wider society. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is on the first slide, and here are the references.